if our true and original state is a state of being, i.e. we are not creators, then how and why did we leave this state of being to enter into this earthly illusory state of separation in the first instance? Bhagavan, when people ask Bhagavan such questions, Bhagavan gave a very nice response. He said, first see whether you have ever left the state of being. In other words, first see what you actually are. If we investigate ourselves and see what we actually are, we will see that we are always in the state of being. We have never left the state of being. Our rising as ego is not real. It's only an appearance. We seem to have risen as ego because we're not looking at ourselves. So long as we look at other things, so long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we seem to have risen as ego. But if we turn our attention back to see what we actually are, we will see that we are nothing other than being. We have never risen or done anything at all. So to ask how or why we left the state of being assumes that we've left the state of being. And we seem to have left the state of being only because we have not investigated ourselves keenly enough. So Bhagavan used to say, asking how or why we've left this state of being is like asking how or why the son of a barren woman was born. There is no such thing as the son of a barren woman, because if a woman is barren, she has no children. If she has a son or a daughter, she's not barren. So the son of a barren woman is a logical impossibility. It's something that doesn't exist. As non-existent as the son of a barren woman is ego. But that doesn't mean that ego doesn't seem to exist. The fact that we're aware of anything other than ourselves, the fact that we're aware of ourselves as the doer of actions and the experience of the fruit of actions means we have seemingly risen as ego. The solution is to investigate what we actually are. When we see what we actually are, we will see that we have never risen as ego, never done any action, never experienced any fruit. But for that, we must have great love and willingness to surrender ourselves completely. Because the price to be paid for knowing what we actually are is to surrender everything else, surrender ego and everything known by ego. This is why Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uludu Napadu, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what this ego is giving up everything. What does that mean? Why does he say if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence? The reason is because everything, that means all phenomena, seem to exist only in the view of ourself as ego. So it's only when we rise as ego, as we do in waking and dream, that we become aware of the seeming existence of things other than ourselves. When we do not rise as ego, as in sleep, we are not aware of anything other than ourselves. So all things appear only in the view of ourself as ego. So if we rise as ego, everything else comes into existence or seems to exist. If we don't rise as ego, nothing else seems to exist. So what Bhagavan says in the first two sentences is actually our experience. But though that is our experience, we wrongly assume that even when we don't know the existence of other things, they still exist. But according to Bhagavan, nothing exists independent of our perception of it, because other things do not actually exist. They only seem to exist, and they only seem to exist in our view. So then Bhagavan says, ego itself is everything. That is, what we are seeing as all this multiplicity, this vast universe, we as ego are seeing ourselves as all this. So all this is nothing but ego. And then he says, therefore, investigating what this is giving up everything. Investigating what this is means investigating what ego is. If we investigate ego, in other words, if we investigate who am I, if we investigate what we actually are, by turning our attention back to ourselves, we will thereby subside and dissolve back into our source. That is, as he explained in the previous verse, verse 25 of Uludunapadu, the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by grasping form. Grasping form means grasping anything other than ourselves. Being aware of anything other than ourselves is what Bhagavan means by grasping form. So we rise, stand, and flourish as ego by being aware of things other than ourselves. But if we investigate ourselves, then, as Bhagavan says, Tedinal otum piticum. If sought, it takes flight. That is, if we investigate to see what we actually are, if we seek to know the reality of ourselves, we as ego will take flight. That means we will subside and dissolve back into our source. So when we investigate ourselves, we will find there is no such thing as ego. Though ego now seems to exist, though we now seem to be ego, that is only because we haven't yet investigated ourselves keenly enough. If we investigate ourselves keenly enough, we will know that we have never risen as ego. In other words, we've never left this state of being. So as Bhagavan used to say, asking how or why, those are the wrong questions. We need to ask who or what am I? That is what we need to investigate. We shouldn't just ask the question. We should be so keen to find out the answer to that question, but we turn our attention within to see what we actually are.